When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Stephen Saux,
And I'm Lori Saux.
and today we're talking about...
Wait, let me help you with that, Boo. Let me help you for a second. Let me assist you. and
You want
make
to
sure-
accommodate me?
I'd like to accommodate you.
Yeah, great. So, how would you do that?
Well, I want to make sure that your mic is on.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that any notes you have are enlarged or that you have your glasses
Oh, good.
to be able to read any notes.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you have water. So that
Oh,
you,
yeah, thank you.
And I remind you of your water, which is funny. Reminding of water is one of Liam's accommodations as well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And
So, this episode is
about that was the silliest intro, but we've discussed this episode. And one of the things that's really important to us is this can make you really mad. Well, I don't know if it makes you really mad, but I know that this topic makes me very just frustrated and just
Well,
all
not
the
accommodations
no,
itself.
but the topics, like the topic
Lack of accommodations.
Right. This episode is who are we accommodating? Because one, since the beginning of Liam's IEPs, accommodations and modifications. When we were first introduced to accommodations, we were introduced to it with such a heavy hand, almost as if they were sweets. And there was only one bag and everybody had to share from that bag, but they didn't know how many people were coming to the party. So it was like they were given away. So just, what's that called when you're like selfish? So not selfishly, but it was so stingy. They weren't like,
Yeah.
they weren't looking at Liam and saying, these are the accommodations that he needs to access his curriculum. So
It makes sense that the analogy is going to be about a party and sweets
yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, because I'm trying to make it fun.
Yes.
But the thing is accommodations are a part of a legal binding document. We have those accommodations because a lot of really brave people fought for them. The IEP, the 504, that had to be fought for. So they're really important because they can be the difference of accessing. And that's right. What does it mean to access it? I always use the analogy of there's a door and there's a key. And I can't get into the room without that key. Those accommodations are the key for Liam to get into the room, which is the curriculum, which is his education. And his education is a right. It's not a favor. I've said that sentence so many times this year, especially when we're in a new environment or an environment that doesn't know Liam or his ability or doesn't see him as able or capable. And a lot of teachers still don't know about IDEA. A lot of teachers don't really understand that an IEP is legal binding document that needs to be followed. So I have to remind, there's a lot of reminders that the accommodations are not favors. They're his right. So we felt that this topic was really important because what we've experienced this year is the realization that we do a lot of accommodating, right? We do. And this was a subject, we actually brought this up on our IEP, the last IEP we had, because there's a lot of requests from teachers, or a teacher has, that's not how they run their syllabus. That's not how they break down their classroom. They don't really, they can't really front load because they don't do that work till an hour before the class. That's just how they run their class. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. Right?
He was coaching a soccer team too.
Yep.
And he also, had gotten himself involved in student council.
Right.
So he had
and
a lot
so
of
his schedule, people,
stuff.
we accommodate, and we understand people have schedules. We understand that people don't have the training. We understand individuals maybe have never had a student with Down syndrome before. And we accommodate that, don't we? We are empathetic. We are understanding. And when it comes to dealing with a new school or teachers or administration that have never had somebody in their classrooms with Down syndrome and don't understand the way the IEP works or the way the accommodations are utilized, we accommodate them by, like, I'll show them, I will demonstrate, I will instruct, I will do the accommodating of schoolwork. And I'll do that. Because I've spent a lot of years being angry at a broken system, which it doesn't fix the system to be angry, but the anger it's justified. But the anger, it destroys me from within. The anger takes its toll on me. It doesn't affect anybody else in that room except us and Liam. It can definitely become very one-sided, and everybody can lose sight of the fact that those accommodations, they're for Liam, they're a part of a legal binding document that must be upheld.
Well, I think that frightens teachers and administrations.
I do not believe they are frightened, because
I think they're frightened by the idea of, because I've never really thought of it before when we say, hey, this is a binding a legal binding document. That's why we need to get it in place for him. But then they're bound to it. And I think their fear is that they're bound to all these things that they go, oh, now we got to do this.
I don't think it's fear, because fear is not a great motivation anyway. But if I was afraid of failure, or if I flipped that around and said I really wanted to do this because it's my job, I wouldn't blatantly dismiss it. I wouldn't disregard it.
Yeah,
so
right,
I don't think there's any fear there.
Yeah.
Because they're so often just they just don't exist. They just don't exist on a daily basis. So, and then the thing is this, then they will use Liam not accessing the curriculum as a reflection of Liam, as of his ability. And this is really what's happened in the system to propagate the misperceptions of incapability in the Down syndrome community for a long time. It's a system that just keeps pushing things along and propagating the narrative that they want, and that narrative is inability, not being capable. And I'm not going to let that reflect on Liam, and I call it out. The accommodations aren't there. That grade isn't a reflection of my son, but that grade, my son should never get a D or an F.
Not if he's accommodated.
Not if he's accommodated. That should never happen. And when there's an F, I've written 2 emails this year that said that points to a non-implemented IEP, and it's more of a reflection of not being taught, than not being able to learn.
Oh yeah, and if they're not accommodating, especially early on in the school year, and then when they finally are getting some things in place, the student cannot be held accountable for the weeks that weren't accommodated. That's something that we ran into too, where teachers were like, "Good, now why don't you just catch up with us?"
It's not about playing catch up. No,
do this and that, unit 1 and 2 again, and it's like, well, "Are you serious?" And we've been doing so much work. He's not going to just tread water for another couple weeks to quote unquote catch up.
You can never catch up, especially in high school, especially like when you're, especially in math. It's like you're working on one chapter, and then the rest of the class moves on, and now we're doing stuff from like 2 weeks ago. So, but that again is work not being accommodated, right? And this year it's been a challenge this year, his freshman year, but high school is hard. It's a challenge for everyone. I try to take that into consideration, not as an excuse, but just to understand. But we sat in our IEP, and one answer to Liam not accessing the curriculum, somebody had the idea that we would just reassess him, because they had read in the IEP that I hadn't agreed with the assessments from the end of 8th grade that are now part of his triennial IEP. Now, they did not read that the reason that the team agreed that they were inappropriate was because assessments are inappropriate. The system that's in place right now to assess your student, like what we've experienced, is highly inappropriate because it's strangers that
Don't know your student.
Visit them on a finite set of days, use non-accommodated tests. And I'll be honest, the OT assessment, like when she was discussing the things that she did, that Liam was counted off because he was trying to pick something up and it dropped on the floor and it took him too long to pick up, I cried because that is so unkind. But yet this is the nature of assessments. They're not really geared. Again, they're not geared for success. They're not geared for support. They're not geared to really like evaluate ability. They're really geared, in my experience, to keep that box and keep them in a box. And I've had to fight. I've had to fight every time. I've had to fight, and I've had to pick apart every sentence that's in those assessments. So that was their idea. Here's another thing. We signed a little part
on the IEP.
On the IEP that said Liam never has to have another assessment. And I believe that's because it's high school and the next assessment would be like 11th grade. So we have the ability to go, no, we're not doing this again. We're not doing it again. He'll be going into his senior year. There's no reason for that. By then we know. So it became a conversation of I just feel like it's a fight because it's like, do your job.
Yeah. What happened was also when they don't do their job and then you're coming at them to do these things, that's a tactical move by administration to look and say, great, where can we go from here? Where can we shift? And the shift is, let's just reassess. That gives them weeks to
and how much work is that? How much
again? And not implement things, and the stress that would be on Liam, taking him out of class. Then
they're inappropriate. Inappropriate assessments, and we're fighting to get like a speech therapy that doesn't interfere with his curriculum classes. Do you know how many hours of curriculum they miss during those assessments? I mean, they get pulled out of class for like, depending on how many assessments you have, that's classwork.
Days.
At least per assessment. You know, I've sat in so many IEPs that have lost focus on who we're there to support and what we are in that room to do. The story behind the meeting, why we have to fight in the first place, is an ugly chapter in our history. It's founded in sterilization, segregation, and institutionalization. And it's like one of those handbooks that you get that there's a warning and you wonder why there's even that warning because it's so just mundane or obvious. We're in a room fighting for something that should just be an equal education. My child's right to an equal education. But it has never just been.
No, and what's lost on me is the doubling down. You know, the resistance, the heels digging in, you know, on the wrong side of the law, on the wrong side of history. They find it reasonable that a student with a disability should receive a less than equal education. Mm-hmm. And they're willing to break the law to do it. And they break the law with no thought to consequences or accountability.
We're fighting the discrimination that is so innate that it's not seen as discrimination. And when you're in that room, it is the ultimate gaslighting. Just sitting in that room where a team of people tell you that fighting for your students' rights is wrong. Telling you that you should expect less for your student because of their number of chromosomes. And oftentimes I will stop and say, tell me who else this would be acceptable for. I've started to just call it out and say, the only reason this is acceptable is because my son has Down syndrome. But you wouldn't do it to another student. And that is just the truth. And so we fight. And the fight is electric. It's burning us and the fight is electric. It burns us from within because how many times Do I have to have this conversation? Liam took an English test last week, and he didn't get it accommodated. There was no front loading. They forgot to put a study guide in. And the night before, there was a list of vocabulary that I had never seen. And I wrote an email and I said, hey, this test that he's taking tomorrow has not been accommodated. I want to bring it to your attention that all of these accommodations were not upheld. I don't know how he's going to do. Maybe he'll do great. But, in truth, I was like, you're setting him up to fail.
But still, you have to work so hard and cram for a couple of days. Because
no, it was the night before.
It.
It was the night before. And I'm going to tell this is what I've stopped doing. Liam doesn't cram.
I know, but the pressure's there. That's what I'm saying is even when they fail him,
we tried.
Still the pressure's on him and then on us going, well, the test is still coming.
Yeah, the night before we still did. I did go over the vocabulary words. I did create note cards. We did talk about it, but that's not testing. And you know what? The thing is, and I've told them many times, Liam can memorize. He can memorize all day long, but he needs the time to memorize it, right? Mm-hmm. So the next day, once that letter was read, I got a letter back saying, hey, he took his test today. The teacher was so excited. They were saying what a great job he did. I think you're really going to be proud. Maybe the next day or 2 days later, I looked up his grade and he received a 65.7. He got a D. And the teacher was just, he did great. So my question to administration was, if that teacher came to them and said, oh my goodness, my class just rocked this test, everybody got a D, how would they feel about that? And the administration had no answer.
They didn't respond to that.
They didn't respond at all.
You said it multiple times.
I said it multiple times.
And they just went, okay. Did she just say this because he has Down syndrome?
Yeah.
You said it so matter of fact.
The only reason that teacher thought a D was a great grade is because my son has Down syndrome. And she looked at my son as that's what he's capable of doing. However, the fact that none of his accommodations were in place, to study for that test, that is where the failure is. Accommodate his work. Don't tell me you want to reassess my child. Reassess your staff. Reassess the teachers. Support them. Have them do their job. And that's why we tried to be really light about it, because that's really we're empathetic and we're understanding, but at a certain point, it's like, it doesn't make it okay. I can be empathetic. I get it. The training's not there. I get it. You've never seen an individual in your classroom with Down syndrome. I get it. You have prejudices against my son. You have preconceived notions about what you think they can do. Well, you've proven what you can do, and I'm still not judging you. I'm still thinking you can do better. I'm still thinking you're able. So give my son the same consideration. But do it upholding the legal binding document that allows him to succeed, that allows him to learn, that allows him to thrive, that allows him to break down the barriers, the boundaries, the prejudices, the misperceptions. That's what needs to happen. That's why I get so fired up.
Electric burning from within.
Yeah, no, it was such a surprise. And it gets frustrating to continue to have the same conversation. So we try to have conversations honestly, with respect, not shaming anyone, because this is how we want our student to be treated. Thinking of ability and with the hope of the evolution of humanity in our hearts. Like, these teachers will figure it out. They will support them. Now, I also tell them, one, this is your prejudice. You may not think it. It's clear you are if you believe this. But also, we have a math teacher that that's like, he doesn't want to give, he doesn't want to support. Because I reached out. And have you ever heard a teacher say, they'll accommodate the work? I'm like, I'm asking you, is this what you would say to any other parent or any other student that came to you for extra help? you'd give them the help. You'd gladly give any student in your class a printout of problems they can practice this week. And
Yeah.
I was denied that by a teacher. So, my daughter has this beautiful app on her phone. It's a math app that allows you to take a picture of any math problem and it will break it down for you step by step with instructions. And that's what she saw me, because this does, people talk about having a sibling and how it affects the siblings. She gets really affected by our fight for equality, but she loves her brother and it makes her an advocate, right? And what she did was she saw the struggle and she was like, hey, I think I can help. And she gave me this app, this app that basically does the work, which I guess that's how she was able to access her curriculum. Because if a teacher is failing, and ever since COVID, I feel like teachers rely on IXL and all of these programs that aren't really accessible because they don't accommodate. So this is what I offer to you. If they're not accommodating the work, okay, give me the work. Give me the work, right? You have a math app, and you know what I do with every single question that I don't know? I ask my computer the answer. And I told them that at the IEP. I said, I have struggled and reached out for information that we're not getting. And do you understand? I need the information so I can support my son at home. I need the accommodation to do his homework unless you're willing to do all the work at school. And I'm not getting it. So I've replaced your math teacher with a math app. And I've replaced your English teacher with my computer, because if you're not going to tell me the plot points that I need to reiterate with my student, I'm going to ask the computer, and the computer will gladly tell me the plot points. If I don't know the structure of a sentence or how to break down or teach a paragraph, I can go on the internet and find it really easy. And that's what I did last week. And my week was exponentially better. That's assistive technology that I'm utilizing. And assistive technology is a component in your IEP. You can put assistive technology as an accommodation, and you can define that as anything. You can be very specific if you want. You can be like word banks. It can be like typing, when they're typing and then it like guesses the word for you. All of those things are ways that the assistive technology is helping support and teach. So we're just utilizing that same assistive technology accommodation when we're at home, giving him the accommodations that he's not receiving in the classroom. He's doing a paper. He has to write a paragraph. There's a bunch of words that he gets to choose from because they're working on a descriptive paragraph. But they're just words right now, right? Mm-hmm. So for every word that he was thinking of, like sometimes I'll point to something just to be silly and I'll be like, well, let's find out what it means. We will learn the definition of every single one of those words, because every time he pointed to a word that he didn't know what it meant, we would call out for the definition, and then he can make the decision.
To like Alexa or something.
Yeah, to the assistive technology.
You can also call out like Alexa for synonyms or antonyms.
For synonyms, for antonyms.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you would state that in IEP as assistive technology, bring that up in your IEP, and it can be used.
Honestly, assistive technology. Do you remember how hard we fought for an assistive technology when Liam was in first grade? We really fought for him to have assistive technology, which is assistive technology is also audiobooks, things like that. Things like now post-COVID can sometimes just be a part of the classroom, but assistive technology, make sure it's in your IEP. It's a calculator, right? It can be a math app. It can be.
And you have to be specific with these things.
I think
say,
sometimes
hey, he needs to have a calculator.
I think the calculator, because honestly, math teachers get kind of
so that he can hear it while he reads.
Right. It can be like we ask for tangible, which is not assistive. Well, it's assistive, but it's not technology. So an audiobook is one thing. When he's typing, that program that allows like a word predictor, predictor.
Right.
is one thing. And then also, access to the synonyms, the thesaurus, and those things that honestly, most English teachers utilize those now, but you can put that in your IEP at any time. And then when I'm doing the homework, I use assistive technology as the gap because I'm not a teacher. I'm definitely not a teacher of all subjects, and I don't know. I don't know a lot. I do not know. And this is also something that I say at the IEP. It's like, I'm not a professional. I'm not a teacher. And so I do need to use my own assistive technology to look things up so that way I can make sure I'm doing it correctly. I'm supporting him correctly. And that's my accommodation. And that's also my upholding Liam's accommodations that allow him to access the curriculum. And when I'm using it, I definitely see that door open. I don't think that using AI should ever be a substitute for a human. Our humanity is what's important. I use it when that humanity has disappeared from my son's education. And that's really what it comes down to, because how do you look at another human and decide that you're not going to give them the one thing that in this case by law is their right, and you decide that it's too much work or you don't have the time or you're just not going to do it.
And for the most part, when you Google search something or even an AI aspect of it, if you are just trying to get answers, for the most part, that entity is not like humans that have misconceptions and
Judgments?
Judgments, stereotypes. I mean, in fact, a Google search would give you the history of the misperceptions and the stereotypes, but it'll put it in its place in history, right? It doesn't hold that as its belief. So when it gives you information, it gives it to you almost feeling like an advocate very often. I'm not saying that it's 100%, but if you Googled, Down syndrome and the importance of educating someone with Down syndrome, it would come up with all these great articles that people have written and they're advocates, and that's what it gets its information from. It doesn't have that 30 or 25 years of educational experience of the past that can cause some people and teachers to have a preconception of your son or your daughter or your student.
When you say, when you're talking about the 25-year-old, like, I'm not saying every teacher out there that's been teaching for 30 years, because there are some teachers that from, when they started teaching, they were the advocates. They were the ones saying, I'm going to educate this student. There are those people, but there are people who have been teaching before our student had the right to an education. And that's a hard turn for a teacher to make. And some people don't make it, don't want to make it, don't think they have to make it. So, when you say that about the internet giving you an answer, that's just the fact,
right? With no
prejudices. There's
clouding
no
of years of experience or inter-educational system problems. Think about not having OTs or not having enough speech, and then that's gonna change the way you approach an IEP if you're an administration of maybe you don't need that third hour of speech, right? Can we move over this way? Just without any of that.
Because they're not thinking of the student.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff
need.
going on in an IEP. There's a lot of politics going on in an IEP that in the background that we don't even know,
We know.
maybe someone has just told them that this is my last year there, or I'm quitting in 2 weeks. So it changes all kinds of things.
But stuff that doesn't matter, right? And stuff that shouldn't change anything.
Shouldn't affect Liam.
No, that's not his problem. That's what I'm saying.
That's the accommodations.
About. Right, we're
accommodating We're
them.
accommodating all of this stuff.
And it doesn't.
The guy saying, now I took on this coaching thing and this. Okay, let's give you more time to look. Oh, so you're not available in the afternoon? It's like, why?
What? Why? That is not the law.
So you can coach a team and do something else?
Now that coach is important to those students that he coaches. Put my son on the team. And then It's inclusive. If it's inclusive or it's not, sports is so important. And I don't negate that everybody's place and everybody's job is important. However, that focus does not take priority of doing something that they're bound to do by law.
And the fact that an administration can be spread thin does not mean that your child shouldn't get an equal education.
And that they come to us and say, well, we're sorry. We're doing our best. Well, you know
Oopsies.
who else is doing his best?
Yeah.
Liam. Liam's doing his
and
best.
then he's held to like
a different bar than they are.
Yes.
Right? He's held to a different bar than they are. And so that's the conversation.
And that's the frustration.
Yeah, that's the conversation. And the frustration is that it's Liam's right to have an education. It's not that coach's right to coach or his right to wait until an hour before class to prep. It's not their right? So, and then the accommodations, they're his right. They're not favors. I'm doing you a favor if I go, yeah, I get it. You coach on Tuesdays, so you can't get me that until Thursday. I'm doing you that. That's a favor I'm doing for you to accommodate you as a favor because I'm a human. I have empathy. At my core, I love everyone. I might not be happy with the way that you're upholding my child's right to an education, but we see everybody's doing their best. Sometimes their best is less than what we would, want, but it is what it is. But that, my accommodating you, that's definitely a favor. That's definitely a favor. And I think there needs to be clarity. And one conversation I have is, I'm going to do this. I'm going to collaborate. You violated an IEP. I am at right now not filing any kind of complaint about it because I believe we can get to where we need to be. I don't want to waste energy and time and my resources. We've spent so many hours this school year writing letters. And if you listen to our podcast, you know that I had 1 year where I didn't have to write any emails and it was the best thing ever. And I don't like to write the emails, but they're necessary. They're necessary to communicate, but they're also necessary because I have a really beautiful paper trail. I have a beautiful paper trail of every inequality, of every violation, of every conversation, and it's there. So there's no question. And that can come out when someone decides to limit my son. And then we can pull those things out and examine who's really not doing the work, who's really not able.
Or if they say, let's reevaluate.
Yeah, no. Just so you know, nobody can ever say we want to reassess. There is a reassessment plan. There's so much paperwork. So don't just let somebody throw that at you. It's a distraction.
And if you see that box that says your child doesn't have to get reassessed ever again, keep that as an option.
Yeah, I think I'd have to do research to find out, but that might be like once you get to that last triennial into high school, that might be what it is. But I know the fight is hard, and we know it's exhausting. But what we're doing is we're fighting to break down barriers and remove the limits that were built by discrimination and inhumanity. And sometimes it can really feel like we're throwing ourselves against a wall. And the truth of it is that sometimes we are. But I'll throw myself against that wall until it crumbles. And it's my son's rights that are upheld. And those accommodations are in place, allowing him access to an unwritten future fueled by his potential and filled with unlimited possibility.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.